Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 on Thursday. We have Thursday Night Football tonight. We got a good one between the Packers and the Arizona Cardinals. No Devontae Adams. He did not make the trip, so he is out tonight. Alan Lazard on the COVID list. So this game lost a little bit of its luster, but should be a good one anyway. In the NFC, Cardinals and Packers. You can hear it tonight on 97.3 ESPN. I talked about this yesterday as Andrew DiCecco set to join me for another edition of Football at 4. The NFC seems to essentially have 5 playoff teams already locked in. Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, and the Rams. I think those 5 teams are in, and then the 2 extra wild card spots. I think it's going to be a crazy sprint to the finish line between a lot of teams that are just kind of stuck in the middle. You got the Saints at 4-2. You've got Minnesota at 3-3, which means if Philadelphia, Andrew, wants to stay in that conversation, they are 2-5, which would put them 2 games behind the pace right now. This is a very imperative game for them, and I know 0-7 Detroit, but let's start with that. Is this a game where you see 0-7 Detroit and feel like, hey, this is a get-right week, or are you thinking, looks like this is a prime spot for Detroit to pick up a home win?
No, actually, it's quite the contrary, Mike. Detroit's a team that plays very hard for Coach Dan Campbell. Remember, they were up on the Rams. They were up on the Ravens. They were up also against. They almost won against the Vikings, who you mentioned. So this is a team that's very close. They believe in what Dan Campbell has, his vision and what he's preached, and they have this hard-nosed mentality. And they're playing tough, and they're really close. And I think they're going to pounce on an Eagles team that's sort of reeling right now and struggling to find an identity. And this could be one of those weeks where things start to blow up. And split in the locker room and things like that tend to splinter, because I think the Lions, the 0-7 Lions have a good chance to steal a win here on Sunday. Yeah,
I'm glad that you went down that road, because obviously you just mentioned they believe in their coaching staff, Dan Campbell, and what he's brought in there. You get the sense that is not the case here in Philadelphia right now. I know Jason Kelce said, hey, we have good leaders, and you have to have good leaders, and if you have good leaders, that means you believe in the coaches. But is there some thoughts to the contrary, that they're not 100% on board with this new coaching staff is bringing to the table?
Well, the offensive players seem to be fully on board. Whenever they've been asked, they've always backed Nick Sirianni, and they seem to be fully bought in. The only player that I've really seen that might have any sort of there may be some gray area there would be Fletcher Cox, because he's just come out multiple times and questioned his usage. And, then that if he's saying it, you have to wonder how many other guys feel the same way, at least on that side of the football. And that is a dangerous game to play when you are a team that really needs a victory, and you're facing a team that's very hungry. And, and they've been so close the past couple of weeks. That's a recipe for disaster, and things can quickly spiral even further out of control if they're not able to capitalize against an inferior team in the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, let's look at that defensive side of the ball and Fletcher Cox, and I guess we got to look at he mentioned Gannon this week that, hey, Fletcher has come to me, and we got to take into what he's saying into account. He said not only Fletcher, others have as well. What would the message of Fletcher Cox be to his coach right now? What do you think the players want to try to do a little differently?
Be a little bit more aggressive and less passive, and stop exploiting the linebackers and really try to mask their deficiencies, because they're being asked to do a lot, Mike, and they're probably the most vulnerable position on the roster. And I think you want to make the secondary, which has played a lot of football as we've outlined, have them have a little bit more of an elevated responsibility and let the defensive line and apply pressure and do what they do best. And instead of playing this passive read and react scheme that's really not seemingly benefiting anyone, and guys like Fletcher Cox and Josh Sweat have really been rendered ineffective as a result.
Yeah, I know we talked a little bit about earlier in the week, hey, you got Steve Nelson and you got Darius Slay, and, hey, why not put a little bit more on their plate and take a little bit more off the plate of the linebackers? The linebackers that they used last week, you've got Singleton, who, he just is what he is. He's a guy who works really hard. He tries hard. He's always going to be there in tackles. He seems to lead the team in tackles a lot because he's hustling. He's always running around. He's just a little undersized. But what about the other linebacker spot? Is there something, Davion Taylor seemed to have a rough day at the office. It seemed like when he's on the field, Andrew, teams are targeting him big time. He looks confused in coverage from what I'm watching. You got TJ Edwards, who's better in run than he is to pass. They had Eric Wilson in there earlier. So it seems that they don't really have a second option. But what are you seeing from the linebacker spots as to why they're struggling?
Well, I mean, they're, like I said before, they're like 3s and 4s on most teams, and they're asked to be 1s and 2s. They are rotational players. A lot of these guys are best suited to be special teams, performers and core members in that regard. They're limited, Mike. They're very one-dimensional. They're undersized. They're small. They'd be best utilized in a sub package, in coverage and get those guys in space against some of these running backs and tight ends sparingly, not rolling out there and playing, 80% of the defensive snaps. That's not really what they're best suited for. I mean,
right.
That's not their makeup. And on any other team, they would be the Sean Bradley of that team, the core special teams performer. And here they just keep adding more to their responsibilities, and you're asking a limited group of players to really become a prominent, bona fide second level, which is really not what they're equipped to do.
All right, so in this week here, you got Hawkinson. I know Williams is a nice pest catcher out of the back. Can Detroit exploit Philadelphia's linebackers? It feels like every week, hey, we're talking about Waller last week, even though he ended up not playing in the game. That was a little bit of a surprise. We talked about Kittle. We've talked a lot about tight ends and getting them matched up with Eagles linebackers. So is Detroit in their game plan saying, hey, we got the personnel to go after their weak spot?
Yeah, the Eagles have shown me nothing, Mike, to suggest that they're going to stop and secure that area of the field. I think T.J. Hawkinson's going to have a very big day. I also think Amon-Ra St. Brown, their rookie wide receiver, he's a quick twitch, short area quickness type of player in that intermediate area. I think he's going to have a nice day. Khalif Raymond has really surprised, and he's their leading wide receiver. They have a lot of these undersized, quicker, short area guys, much like a Hunter Renfrow. They don't have a whole lot of name brand type of players on their offense outside of DeAndre Swift and Jared Goff. And their offensive line is actually a lot better with Penei Sewell playing left tackle. So, I mean, yeah, I think that they're going to attack that short area of the field and really take advantage of an area that teams have been able to pounce on so successfully, most recently the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, and Andrew, that the Raiders are not a very good rushing team. Like, contrary to what we saw last week, they only average about 3.3 yards a carry. They are not a very good offensive line, contrary to what we saw last week. So, Detroit, do you expect them to have success in running the football because they're a good running team or because Philadelphia is that bad against the run?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination of both because they do have a retooled offensive line. They have two young guards, which I like. They have Penei Sewell there. And they also have a very dynamic rushing tandem in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams that are sort of that thunder and lightning type of combination where you have DeAndre Swift, who's more of that quicker pass-catching option, and then Jamal Williams is going to pound it between the tackles. I think he's going to have a nice day, probably snag a touchdown, much like Kenyon Drake did when you saw, the number 2 option for them becomes, have such a big day. I think they're going to find success doing that because they're going to stay committed to it. And I think that they're in a place where they know how close they are. It's the Eagles are sort of unraveling at an inopportune time, and the Lions, they believe in their coach. They believe in the message. They know that they're close, and they're going to play fundamentally sound football, and they have an identity, which is something that the Eagles have lacked, going into Week 8 now. So I think they're going to make best use of the skill players that they have, and I think the Eagles are a clearly more talented team, but I think the Lions, they fully bought in, and they have a little bit more structure.
By the way, we'll talk to former Lion Jerry Ball coming up in about 30 minutes from now to get the Lions' perspective as well. So stick around for that. Right now, Andrew DiCecco, football at 4. Eagles-Lions this Sunday, 1 o'clock, 97.3 ESPN. Darius Slay back in Detroit. He tweeted about how excited he is. It's, his second home for him. You think he's going to have a larger voice in the game plan this week? And if he does, what is he saying? We asked about Fletcher Cox, but if Darius Slay has a larger voice, what is he telling John Gannon this week?
Let me be aggressive. Let me, get up on some of these guys, because Darius Slay, in theory, should be able to, eliminate any of their pass receiving options, because he's that good, and they have a very lackluster receiving core, the Detroit Lions. So I think that, and he's so much bigger and more physical than any of their receiving options outside of T.J. Hawkinson. You could also see Darius Slay, sort of draw that assignment of covering T.J. Hawkinson, which he did against Travis Kelce. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I think he's just, much like the defensive line, I think he's going to preach, let's be more aggressive, let's be more physical, let's make some things happen at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because you also said something that I kind of thought you were going to say, is that Detroit doesn't have that talented, standout wide receiver that, Darius Slay would have to kind of move all over the field with. So it should give John Gannon the opportunity this week to say, I'm going to put more trust in my corners. Like, if not this week, when, right?
That's what I mean. This is a very big telltale week, Mike, for many reasons, that being one of them. If the Eagles are not able to compile yardage and score points on this team and run the football on this team, it's probably not going to happen. We're entering week 8 now. This is a very susceptible team against the pass and the run. I mean, yes, they fight hard and all, but the Eagles are a superior team. If they can't move the football on these guys, Mike, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, I know that this is one of those weeks where, and Andrew, I want to get your take on this, because if you are Philadelphia 5-2 and everybody's, hey, Jalen Hurts, what's the story there? You traded Flacco, you got Gardner Minshew, Fletcher Cox, are they listening to the coaching staff? If you lose to a team that's 0-7, what is, Monday morning going to look like for this franchise?
I think they're going to be burning the phone lines down for sports talk radio. The fans will, and you're going to see a lot of outrage on social media, and even more so than it already is, and rightfully so. I mean, that would really leave them at a crossroads, Mike. Where do they go from here? How do they correct this? What's going wrong? I was sort of thinking, like, what happens if the offense is able to score points, but the defense can't stop the run? Or, like, the Eagles rarely play complementary football, so it's usually one unit's on and one's off. Even the special teams. So I don't know, man. I think they already had a team meeting, and that's usually like a last gasp at preserving the season and sort of providing some sort of team unity, as many teams do when things get a little bit dire. But I mean, man, you got to wonder what happens at least with Jonathan Gannon. Is his job going to be secure? And then things start to slip out of the locker room when things start to spiral like that, and it heads down a really dark road. So that's something that obviously, if you're the Eagles, you got to take care of business this Sunday and avoid all that negative attention.
Yeah. Do you have a timeline in your head that, I don't want to say you want to see Hurts benched. We want him to play well so he doesn't have to be benched. But how many weeks? Let's say you lose your 2-6, 2-7, 2-8. Is there a time where you say, you know what? We have to see if Minshew. In other words, we have to see if Minshew can play, or we have to see if this offense works. Like, doesn't the front office have to find out if it's Hurts that's not executing the offense, or if this offense just isn't an NFL caliber offense that Nick Sirianni has installed?
Well, here's the thing. Nick Sirianni and his offensive coaches had 10 days to come up with a little bit more of an elaborate scheme against the Raiders. It looked much like everything that we've seen since week 2, really. And so what makes anyone think that the offense is going to somehow become this innovative, elaborate, and you're going to start to see a lot more pre-snap motion and quarterbacks working in the middle of the field. I mean, and another aspect you have to look at, Mike, Jalen Hurts is one of 16 captains this year. There's guys like Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey and other veteran players on the team that have really taken a liking to him and really have gone out of their way to speak highly of him, and they believe in Jalen Hurts. They like his work ethic. You wonder if sitting him down is going to cause a little bit of dissension in the locker room and things like that, especially if he's playing adequate enough to warrant continuing, being the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that just throws a whole new wrench into the whole situation.
Yeah, that's a great point by you, by the way, that he was a voted captain, and to not have him play, and he's got 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean, the numbers, I'm looking at a list right now, the top quarterbacks under 25. He's on that list at number 8, and then some of the guys ahead of him, you've got Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. I mean, I don't really have a problem with any of the guys in front of him. You got Tua behind him. You've got guys like Justin Fields. I mean, there was guys that drafted in the first round this year that at least some evaluators are saying they think Hurts is better than. So it's interesting. He seems to be a very polarizing conversation because, number one, he's the guy that's here in this market, so everybody wants to see more. But when people around the league are looking at Hurts, I feel like they see some potential and the capability to lead a football team.
And here's another thing to consider, Mike. Let's look back to last season when Jalen Hurts played against the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, he fumbled a number of times, but he looked vastly different from the quarterback that we're seeing now. And I think that it had a lot to do with the offense that that Doug Peterson was implementing around him. That was the best I've seen Jalen Hurts play. Maybe you could say week 1 of this season, but I think that he really had to make difficult throws and decisions, and he had to go back and forth with the Arizona Cardinals last year. So knowing that, you wonder if what he would look like in a more, intricate offensive game plan, right? I mean, you start to wonder if it's the scheme.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. That's why it's one of those like chicken or the egg kind of things. Is it the scheme? So let me see Minshew, if he struggles in this scheme, to see if it's the scheme is the problem. Because if Minshew, someone would say, well, if Minshew's going to come in and execute, why wouldn't he just play anyway? Minshew has had some NFL success, but I think by most accounts his arm strength and some of his other intangibles would kind of label him as a backup or a low-end starter, right?
Yeah, I mean, Gardner Minshew has played enough. He has a large enough sample size that you really know what you're getting with him. You only put Gardner Minshew in if you're officially ready to move on from Jalen Hurts and know definitively that he's not the answer at the quarterback position, because you can't put Gardner Minshew in to sort of jumpstart the offense and then if that doesn't work out, say, hey, Jalen, you're back in. I mean, that's a pretty substantial move,
right?
And there could be ramifications, like I said, within the locker room with Jalen Hurts being named the team captain and things of that nature.
Right, like if you pull him, you're pulling him for good. You can't go back to him.
Yeah, that's
it feels like. Although he has handled it pretty well. He has handled it pretty well in the past. Of all guys you would do this with, he has been a guy who has handled it. But I hear what you're saying, and I tend to agree with you here. Andrew, you got the trade deadline on Tuesday, so obviously it's something to keep an eye on, because there keeps continuously to be reports. The teams are keeping their eye on Philadelphia. Philadelphia, obviously, with the Watson and other players as well. So we'll see what happens. This is a big game for Jalen Hurts. It's a big game for this team. Give me, in your opinion, from the offensive standpoint, something that they could do against Detroit, because, Andrew, Detroit's defense is lousy.
Yeah, I mean, this should be a big week for Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins, particularly Quez Watkins. I think he's going to have a chance to get vertical and have a couple of big explosive chunk plays against this secondary. Amani Oruwariye is their corner from Penn State. He's a big physical corner, grabby, doesn't have great long speed. You should be able to take advantage of him on double moves. And on the other side, they are starting an undrafted corner named Jerry Jacobs. He's a 2021 undrafted free agent from Arkansas. 5'11", 200 pounds, so he has a big squatty build, strong guy, very aggressive against the run, but you get him in space, and he is a very spotty tackler. That's one of his main deficiencies, and his footwork isn't the greatest. It's very sloppy by my standards and many evaluators. So I think that there's going to be an opportunity to attack that second cornerback spot with Quez Watkins and get some of these guys like a Kenny Gainwell in space and make these corners and secondary members tackle them.
I hate to bring this up now, but we're talking quarterbacks, and you're a guy whose opinion that I value and trust when it comes to draft. I heard McShay say that he likes Willis from Liberty already better than he likes Hurts. If you're looking at this first round, because, everybody's already looking at the first round. I hate to talk draft so early, but if you're looking at the first round, is there guys in this year's class, which is not supposed to be a great quarterback class, maybe you'll disagree, that you would say is a better prospect than Jalen Hurts right now?
Yeah, this is a very weak quarterback class, Mike. Malik Willis is actually my favorite quarterback in this class, but that said, given where the Eagles are going to be picking, that would be a tremendous reach, and I don't know that any of the quarterbacks in this draft are worth taking that high. I think that would be more of a desperation move. And also, if Malik Willis is the best quarterback, how does he make it past Detroit or the Houston Texans? And they're going to be picking right up there. So,
well, that's what I say. I don't take a quarterback just to take one. If you're at number 2, take the kid Thibodeau and call it a day, man. Right?
Yes. And if they do move on from Jalen Hurts, you might see. The likely course of action would be a trade, I would think, to get a veteran quarterback or a proven commodity, and at least or a bridge or get a stopgap quarterback and get your guy next season when the draft is when the prospects are a lot more favorable. I think that would be the best road to go down if it doesn't work out with Jalen Hurts.
Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page there, because I hate these teams that just take one because they need one, and it's like you're reaching. There's no reason that some of these guys get taken where they are. We talk about this a lot during the draft, and I'm sure we will again this year. But if you're at number 2, don't say, hey, I don't know when we're going to be at number 2 again, so let's just take a quarterback. No, get the guy that's going to help this team out because they have so many issues. And then, hey, maybe Hurts is better with better talent around him. I think this defense, being as bad as it is, hasn't helped out things either. So when we get into the draft season, I know we're going to have a lot of fun conversations because there's so many picks going on right now. He's Andrew DiCecco, and, of course, Eagles and Lions you can hear right here on 97.3 ESPN. You hear when we talk draft, we get a little excited, Andrew, right?
Yeah, man, definitely, always.
All right, man, we'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Sounds good, Mike. Have a good weekend, man.
You do the same. Andrew's back Tuesday, football at 4 tomorrow. Adam Kaplan will be here tomorrow for football at 4. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash.